All right, good morning, everyone. We are starting today with Shrimad Bhagavata Mahapurana, Book 10, Discourse 82, which is entitled Meeting of the Vrishnis with the Gopas and Gopis of Vrindavana. Sri Shuka began again. Parikshit, once upon a time, when Bhagavan Sri Krishna and Sri Balarama were residing in Dwaraka, there occurred a total eclipse of the sun, which occurs at the time of universal destruction. Having come to know of it from astrologers beforehand, people thronged from all sides to the sacred spot called Samanta Panchaka, which is on the plains of Kurukshetra, with the object of earning merit or blessedness. That is the place where, while exterminating the Kshatriyas on earth, Parashurama, the foremost warrior of his time, caused 5 big tanks to be filled with their blood. The Almighty Lord Parashurama, which is what Samanta Panchaka means, the five pools, essentially. The Almighty Lord Parashurama also performed a sacrifice there for the expiation of sin. Though ever untouched by good or evil karma, being an avatar, he did it like an ordinary mortal in order to set an example before the world. Parikshit, on this great occasion for pilgrimage, people from all parts of India, intent to wash away their sin, assembled at Kurukshetra. There came Yadus like Akrura, Vasudeva, and Ugrasena, and Gada, Pradyumna, Samba, and others. Aniruddha and Kritavarma, the Yadava general, along with Suchandra, Shuka, and Sarana, were left at Dwaraka for the protection of the city. The Yadu, that Shuka is a different Shuka from the Sri Shuka, who is the narrator. The Yadus came all the way with great pomp and splendor, adorned with necklaces of gold, garlands of celestial flowers, and excellent clothes, and protected by armor. They looked like gods as they proceeded with their wives in chariots shining like aerial cars, on horses springing like waves, and on trumpeting elephants appearing like thundering clouds, and in palanquins, etc., etc., carried by footmen shining like Vidyadharas. Reaching Kurukshetra, the blessed Yadus took their bath in the sacred waters, observed a fast according to the rule for fasting during an eclipse, and made gifts of cows in right earnest to the Brahmanas, adorning them with clothes, garlands, and chains of gold. On the conclusion of the eclipse, they again took their bath in the tanks associated with the name of Parashurama, and thereafter fed deserving Brahmanas with dainty dishes. Their object in doing all this was to strengthen their devotion to Bhagavan Sri Krishna's feet. Then the Yadus, who regarded Bhagavan Sri Krishna alone as their deity, broke their fast with the permission of the Brahmanas and lay down to rest pleasure under the cool shade of umbrageous trees. After taking repose for a while, they began to visit their friends and relations among the princes that had congregated there on this occasion. The Rajas of Matsya, Ushinara, Kosala, Vidarbha, Kuru, Sranjaya, Kamboja, Kekaya, Madra, Kunti, Anarta, Kerala, and many other principalities who were either their allies or enemies, had assembled there in their hundreds, O Parikshit. Besides, Nanda and the other Gopas, who were great friends of the Yadavas, and the Gopis, who had been long yearning to see Bhagavan Sri Krishna, had also arrived there. The Yadus saw them all, one after another. The joy they derived from one another's sight opened the buds of their heart. With faces glowing like lotuses in full blossom, and with tears trickling down their eyes, they clasped one another in close embrace. Their hair stood on end, their voices got choked with emotion, and all were transported with joy. Like the men, the women also greeted and looked at one another with smiles and sidelong glances full of love, and folded one another in their arms. While doing so, they pressed to their bosoms, the bosoms of another smeared with saffron paste, and tears of love stood in their eyes. The younger ones bowed to the elders, and were themselves bowed to by those still younger, and welcoming one another and inquiring after their mutual welfare, they related to one another, enchanting stories of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Kunti, when she saw her brothers and sisters with their children, as also her parents, sisters-in-law, and Bhagavan Sri Krishna, had her grief soothed in conversation with them. Kunti, addressing Vasudeva, said, "My brother, I find myself extremely unfortunate. Not a single desire of mine has been fulfilled. What a pity that even noble brothers like you should forget me during my calamities. I am now convinced that friends, relations, sons, brothers, and even parents forget one on whom fortune does not smile. Vasudeva replied, Dear sister, do not find fault with us. We mortals are nothing but toys in the hands of Providence. The world is subject to the control of the supreme ruler, and everyone acts and is made to act according to his will. Sister, you are aware how harassed by Kansa we had to flee from one quarter to another. It is only now that we have been restored to a secure position by Providence. Sri Shuka resumed. All the kings present there were duly honored by Vasudeva, Ugrasena, and the other Yadus, and they felt supremely delighted and gratified at the sight of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Parikshit, Bhishma, Drona, Dhritarashtra, Gandhari with her sons, the Pandavas with their consorts, Kunti, Saranjaya, Vidura, Kripacharya, Kunti Bhoja, Virata, Bhishmaka, the great king Nagnajit, Purajit, Drupada, Shalya, Drashtaketu, along with the king of Kashi, Tamaghosha, Vishalaksha, the king of Mithila, the kings of Madra and Kekaya, Yudhamanyu and Susharma, Bahlika, and others with their sons. These and other kings who had accepted the suzerainty of Yudhishthira due to his performance of the Rajasuya Yajna were astonished to see the person of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the abode of all excellence and beauty, together with his consorts. Sri Balarama and Bhagavan Sri Krishna duly honored them all, and they in their turn joyfully extolled the good fortune of the Yadus, who were the kinsfolk of Bhagavan Sri Krishna and lived under his care. Addressing Ugrasena, they said, O Raja of Bhojas, of all men in this world, you Yadus alone have realized the fruit of your existence, inasmuch as you constantly have before your eyes Bhagavan Sri Krishna, who can rarely be seen even by the greatest of yogis. The glory of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, which is sung by the Vedas, the Ganga water that washes his feet, and the utterances in the form of the scripture go a long way in purifying the world. The earth had of late been robbed of its splendor by time. Its potentialities have now been revived by the mere touch of his lotus-like feet, and it has once more begun to yield all the objects of our desire. You Yadus have both marital and lineal relationship with Sri Krishna. You constantly see him, touch his sacred person, walk with him, chat with him, sit close to him, eat with him, and even sleep with him. Even though you lead the life of a householder, which ordinarily paves the way to Naraka, obviously not inherently, but it is often prone to such things. You have constantly in your midst the all-pervading Lord Vishnu himself, whose very sight puts an end to the craving not only for heaven, but for salvation itself. Sri Shuka continued. When Nanda learnt that Bhagavan Sri Krishna and the other Yadus had come to Kurukshetra, he too came there, together with other Gopas, to see them, with abundant supplies of provisions in their carts. The Yadus were delighted to see Nanda and his companions. They stood up to receive him, even as dead bodies are spurred into activity when infused with new life. Having been anxious for long to meet him, they embraced him tightly. Vasudeva embraced Nanda with great delight and was overwhelmed with emotion as he recollected, one by one, the persecutions to which he had been subjected by Kansa, and how he had been compelled to place his sons in Nanda's keeping at Gokula. Bhagavan Sri Krishna and Sri Balarama embraced their foster parents, Nanda and Yashoda, and bowed to them. Parikshit, overwhelmed with emotion, they could not utter a word as their throats were choked with tears. The blessed Yashoda and Nanda too made their foster sons sit on their lap and folded them in their arms. This removed the agony of their heart, caused by the long separation from their children. Rohini and Devaki too embraced Yashoda, and remembering her friendly behavior towards them, spoke to her in faltering words with their throats choked with tears. Yashoda, we can never forget the continued friendship you have showed to us. It is not possible for us to repay that debt, even if we obtain the fortune of Indra, the ruler of paradise. When Sri Balarama and Sri Krishna have not even seen their parents and their father, and their father left them under your care, you protected them even as the eyelashes protect the eyes. You gave them nourishment, protection, and loving caresses, and performed propitiatory rites for their welfare. In fact, you did all the duty of parents to them. Under your care, they had no cause of fear for anyone. Noble souls like you make no distinction between one who is their own and one who is not so. You and your husband both are really great souls. Sri Shuka went on. I have already told you that the highest object of the gopis' love was Bhagavan Sri Krishna. When seeing him, they used to curse the Creator for having provided their eyes with eyelashes, which interrupted their vision of him, even for a moment. Seeing the Lord, for whom they had cherished such intense longing after such a long time, they all ushered him into their heart through the eyes, and holding him in close embrace mentally, became one with him. The state of oneness with the Lord attained by them through love was not within the easy reach of even those who were ever united with him through meditation. When the Almighty Lord, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, found the gopis in that state of absorption, he visited them in private, embraced them, inquired after their health, and smilingly said as follows: Dear friends, for the service of our people we had to go out of Raja, and leaving friends like you had to engage ourselves in destroying enemies. Do you still remember us who have been out of sight for a long time? I hope you do not entertain a low opinion of us, considering us as ungrateful. It is God's will that unites or disunites beings, which, of course, is an ironic excuse for God himself to make. Just as the wind brings together or scatters clouds, blades of grass, flakes of cotton, particles of dust, even so the Creator brings together or scatters beings of his creation. Friends, it is a matter for congratulation that you have developed that transcendental love for me, which automatically leads to my realization, and I need not tell you that loving devotion to me brings immortality to all who practice it. I am the beginning and end of all beings and pervade them, both inside and outside, even as the elements, the earth, water, air, fire, and ether, constitute the beginning and end of all material objects and pervade them both inside and outside, O fair ones. These 5 elements have entered into the constitution of all physical beings as their material causes, whereas the spirit or self resides in them as the enjoyer or the individual self. I am the ego absolute beyond them both. In fact, both these appear in me. Sri Shuka continued. Bhagavan Sri Krishna thus instructed the gopis in spiritual lore. Revolving that in their mind again and again, the gopis got rid of their ego body and became one with the Supreme Self. They said, O Lord, from whose navel sprung the lotus where Brahma the Creator took his birth, the greatest of yogis, possessed of infinite wisdom, contemplate on your lotus-like feet in their hearts. Your feet alone serve as the support to enable people fallen in the abyss of mundane existence to get out of it. O Lord, occupied as we are with our household duties, kindly bless us that your lotus feet may ever remain present before our mental eyes, so that we may never forget them even for a moment. Thus ends the 82nd discourse entitled The Meeting of the Vrishnis with the Gopas and Gopis of Raja, in the latter half of Book 10 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Discourse 83. Conversation between Bhagavan Sri Krishna's consorts and Draupadi. Sri Shuka began again. The Almighty Lord Bhagavan Sri Krishna was the guru of the gopis, as well as the goal which they sought to attain through the practice of his teachings. Having thus shown his favor to them, the Lord saw Yudhishthira and all his other friends who were assembled and inquired about their welfare. Their sins disappeared at the very sight of the lotus feet of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Kindly inquired after and duly honored by the Lord of the worlds, they felt delighted at heart and replied, Blessed Lord, exalted souls enjoy with their mind the nectar of your lotus feet, which occasionally flows out through their lips in the form of the stories of your enchanting leelas. Those who quaff this nectar to their hearts' fill with the cups of their ears are rid of all ignorance in respect of you, ignorance which is the root of corporeal existence of all embodied beings. How can any evil befall them? Lord, you are an embodiment of unfailing wisdom and a perfect ocean of bliss. The 3 states of the soul occasioned by its contact with the mind, wakefulness, dreaming, and dreamless sleep, cannot touch even the fringe of your effulgent being and melt away even in its proximity into the 4th state. You are the sole resort of recluses who have lost all consciousness of the world. You have assumed a human semblance through your own inconceivable yoga maya in order to protect the Vedas whose influence had waned through the force of time. We offer our obeisances to you. Sri Shuka continued. When Yudhishthira and others were thus extolling the most glorious Lord, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, ladies of the Yadava and Kaurava families met together and began to relate to one another the stories of Bhagavan Sri Krishna sung throughout the three worlds. I shall now tell you what they said. Please listen. Draupadi said, Rukmini, Bhadra, Jambavati, Satya, Satyabhama, Kalindi, Saibhya, Lakshmana, Rohini, and other consorts of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, please tell me how the glorious Lord Bhagavan Sri Krishna espoused you. Though God himself, he behaved like a mortal through his own Maya. Rukmini said, Draupadi, Jarasandha and the other kings wanted that I should be given in marriage to Shishupala. They came armed for a fight to carry out this intention of theirs. But the Lord took me away from their midst, even as a lion carries away its prey from a herd of goats and sheep. Even invincible warriors bear the dust of his feet on their crowns. Dear Draupadi, I sincerely wish that the lotus feet of my Lord, the repository of all prosperity and beauty, may be available to me for worship from birth to birth. Satyabhama said, Draupadi, my father was sorely grieved at the death of his brother Prasena. He therefore charged the Lord with Prasena's murder. In order to wipe off the stigma cast on him, the Lord vanquished the Lord of Bears, Jambavan, in battle, and winning the jewel from him, restored it to my father. Seized with fear on account of the false imputation made by him, my father bestowed the jewel on the Lord, along with myself, even though he had affianced me to another. Jambavati said, Draupadi, my father, Jambavan, the Lord of Bears, was unaware that my Lord was the same as Sri Rama, his own Lord and deity. Therefore, he fought the Lord for 27 days. After this test, when he recognized the Lord to be Sri Rama himself come again, he took hold of his feet and offered me as a present, together with the jewel. May I continue to be his slave from birth to birth, is my only prayer to the Lord. Kalindi said, Draupadi, when the Lord came to know that I was practicing austerities in the hope of obtaining the privilege to touch his feet, he came with his friend Arjuna and espoused me. I now have the privilege of sweeping his house. Mitravinda said, Draupadi, my father called an assembly of kings at his capital to enable me to elect my own partner in life. The Lord, too, attended the assembly and, vanquishing all the kings, took me away to his capital of Dwaraka, which is the abode of all excellence and beauty, even as the lion carries away his prey from a pack of dogs. My brothers who offered him resistance with a view to delivering me from his hands, and thereby injuring me, were equally worsted in the fight. I now seek that in every life I may get the privilege of washing his feet. Satya said, Draupadi, in order to test the strength of the kings who had assembled to seek my hand, my father had secured 7 oxen, endowed with inordinate strength and energy and very sharp horns. These oxen had shattered the pride of many a valiant warrior, but the Lord playfully and quickly took hold of them, put strings through their noses, and brought them under his power in no time, even as children deal with kids. Kids as in baby goats. Thus winning me as a reward for his strength, my Lord carried me to Dwaraka with all my attendant maids under the protection of a strong army. He conquered on the way all the princes who tried to intercept. O Queen, my only desire now is that I may always get the opportunity of serving him. Bhadra said, Draupadi, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is the son of my maternal uncle. Knowing that I had given my heart to him, my father sent for Sri Krishna of his own accord and bestowed me on him with an army consisting of 1 Akshauhini and many maids of honor. I now consider that my highest good lies in obtaining in every birth the touch of his feet wherever I may be thrown by the force of my karma. Lakshmana said, O Queen, Devarishi Narada frequently sings the story of the avatarana and leelas of the Lord on earth. Having heard those songs and duly considering the fact that Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, rejecting Indra and the other guardians of the world, had chosen him as her consort, I set my heart on the Lord. O virtuous lady, my father, who is known by the name of Brihatsena, loved me intensely. When he came to know of my mind, he contrived a plan for carrying it into effect. O Queen, just as on the occasion of your self-choice of a husband, your father invented the device of a fish in order to get Arjuna for you, my father too invented a similar device, with this difference, that the fish was totally screened externally, and only its reflection could be seen in the water. Hearing of this, kings versed in the secrets of archery and the use of all other arms, came along with their teachers and their thousands from all sides to the capital of my father. All were honored by my father with due regard to their prowess and age. With their hearts set on winning me, they took up the bow and arrow kept in that assembly and attempted turn by turn to hit the mark. Some of them lifted the bow, but finding themselves unable to string it, left it where it was. Others succeeded in drawing the string as far as the other end of the bow, but unable to fasten it to that end, fell down struck by it as it snapped back. Evidently, this is a bow of extremely high draw weight, such that it requires immense strength to bend it. Greatest warriors like Jarasandha, Shishupala, the king of Ambashta, Bhima, Duryodhana, and Karna, all of these succeeded in stringing the bow, but could not locate the fish. Seeing the reflection of the fish in the water, Arjuna was able to locate it, discharged the arrow, aiming at it with great care, but failed to hit it, the arrow only touching the fish. In other words, it stuck into the board to which the fish was affixed, so close that it was in fact touching the edge of the fish, but it did not pierce into the fish. O queen, the pride of the proudest of princes having thus been crushed, most of the kings returned to their seats, giving up all hopes of winning me. It was then that the Almighty Lord took up the bow, strung it sportfully, joined the arrow to it, and looking but once at the reflection of the fish, pierced it by his shaft and brought it down to the ground. The sun was at the meridian at that time. O good Draupadi, shouts of victory were raised all over the earth, while celestial drums began to sound in the heavens, and gods transported with joy showered flowers. O queen, I entered the arena at that moment with the anklets at my feet sweetly jingling. I wore around my loins a new piece of finest silk and had wrapped myself with another. With flowers adorning my braid and bashful smiles on my lips, I carried in my hands a brilliant necklace of jewels wrought in gold. Thick tresses of hair overhung my face, and brilliant earrings added luster to my cheeks. Lifting up my face, I glanced at the kings on all sides with enlivening smiles and sidelong looks, and with a heart overflowing with love, gently placed the necklace round the neck of my lord. The moment I placed the necklace round his neck, clay tom-toms, tabors, conches, drums, and kettle drums were sounded, male and female dancers began to dance, and songsters began to sing. Draupadi, when I thus chose my beloved lord as my life's partner, the other lovelorn monarchs grew jealous and were very much upset at their discomfiture. In the meanwhile, my lord, possessed of 4 arms, placed me on his chariot drawn by 4 excellent horses, and lifting up his bow and putting on his armor, stood prepared for battle. Daruka drove the chariot, decorated with gold, as all the kings looked on, O queen, and the lord proceeded to Dwaraka, even as the lion passed through a herd of deer. Lifting up their bows and prepared for a battle, some of those kings pursued my lord with a view to obstructing him on the way, but their attempt was no more successful than that of dogs to check the lion. Some of them fell in battle, their arms, legs, and necks being torn asunder by the arrows discharged from the Sharanga bow of the Lord, while others, abandoning the fight, took to their heels. Then the Lord of the Yadus, like the very sun, entered his home, the city of Dwaraka, whose glories are sung in heaven as well as on earth. The city was specially decorated on this day with various ornamental arches and streamers, which screened off the rays of the sun. My father honored all his friends, relations, and kinsmen with valuable textiles and ornaments, beds, seats, and other articles. Though my dearest lord lacks nothing, being complete by himself in every way and delights only in the self, yet my father, out of love, presented him with a number of maidservants, all kinds of wealth, foot soldiers, elephants, chariots, horses, and many valuable weapons. O queen, we must have in our previous lives practiced great austerities, giving up attachment to all. That is why in this birth we earned the privilege of actually working as his maidservants in the household of our Lord. It's you can tell a little bit of the personality of Lakshmana, this particular wife, that while the other one said like a sentence or two, she went on at great detail about the circumstances of her wedding. Clearly very excited to talk about it. Rohini said, having conquered many a king during his expeditions for world conquest, Bhaumasura had made us, their daughters, captive and kept us confined in his palace. Bhaumasura is another name of Narakasura, called Bhauma because he was the son of Bhumi, the earth goddess. When having put an end to Bhauma and all his forces in battle, he came to know of our existence in his palace. He liberated us, he being Krishna, of course, And though perfect in himself, married us all, knowing as he did that we ever contemplated on his lotus feet, which brings emancipation from the bondage of birth and death. O virtuous lady, we crave not for universal sovereignty on earth, or for rulership of the heaven, for the enjoyment attaching to both these positions, or for supernatural powers, for the position of Brahma, or for liberation, or for the various forms of personal existence in the eternal abode of God. We only desire that we may continue to bear on our head the glorious dust of the lotus feet of our Lord, which is scented with the saffron on the bosom of Lakshmi. We long for the touch of the sacred feet of the glorious Lord, which the Gopas and the Gopis, the Bhila women, nay, the very creepers and blades of grass craved for where he tended cows in Vraja. May this yearning of our heart be fulfilled by the Lord. Thus ends the 83rd discourse in the latter half of Book 10 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Discourse 84, an account of the pilgrimage undertaken by Lord Sri Krishna. Sri Sukha began again. Hearing of this deep attachment of the consorts of Sri Krishna, the soul of the universe, to his person, Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, the consorts of the other kings, and even the gopis, whom he held so dear, were all greatly astonished, and their eyes were bedimmed with tears of joy. When the ladies were thus talking with ladies and men with men, a number of sages appeared on the spot for the darshan of Bhagavan Sri Krishna and Sri Balarama. The more prominent of them were Krishna Dvaipayana, which is Vyasa, Devarashi Narada, Chyavana, Devala, Asita, Vishwamitra, Shatananda, Bharadvaja, Gautama, the glorious Parashurama with his disciples, Vasishta, Galava, Bhrigu, Pulastya, Kashyapa, Atri, Markandeya, Brahaspati, Dvita, Trita, Ekata, Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara, Angira, Agastya, Yajnavalkya, Vamadeva, and a few others. Seeing these rishis, revered and worshipped by the world, all the rajas who had been sitting there from before, including Yudhishthira and the other Pandavas, Sri Krishna and Balarama, at once stood up and bowed to them. Sri Krishna, Balarama, and all those who were present there welcomed the sages with sweet words and duly honored them by offering seats, water to wash their hands and feet with, garlands, incense, sandal paste, etc. When the sages were comfortably seated, the Lord, who had appeared on earth for the protection of virtue, spoke with the great assembly, silently listening to him. The glorious Lord said, "Today our life has been highly blessed, and the object of our taking birth has been fully realized, for we have been honored with a visit from the great masters of yoga, whose sight cannot be easily obtained even by the devas. How can people whose austerities are poor, and who see God cabined in a particular image only, gain the rare privilege of your sight and touch, of inquiring about your health, etc., and of offering you salutations and worship? Sacred waters alone do not possess purificatory virtues, nor do images of clay and stone alone represent the deities. Whereas these purify a man after one has recourse to them and worshipped them for a long time. Holy men purify by their very sight. The gods presiding over fire, the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, water, ether, air, speech, and mind, when worshipped, cannot completely wash off our sins, inasmuch as they promote our sense of diversity. Whereas the wise wipe off our sins even if we serve them for a few minutes, less than an hour. O sages and assembled friends, he who looks upon his contemptuous body, which is virtually dead from the perspective of a greater perspective of time, like will be dead in a heartbeat, constituted of the three elements of wind, bile, and phlegm, as the self. Those related to the body as one's own, and images of clay, stone, or wood as his objects of worship, and who regards the sacred waters alone as purifying, and never so the men of wisdom, is indeed a donkey among cows. Sri Sukha resumed. Bhagavan Sri Krishna is the possessor of unfailing wisdom. Hearing the above words from his lips, the sages kept silent. Unable to make out the meaning of those mysterious words, they got confounded. After long consideration, they came to the conclusion that though the Supreme Lord of the universe, he was behaving like an ordinary man subject to the law of karma just in order to teach a lesson to the world. Realizing this, they smiled, and addressed Sri Krishna, the supreme Jagat Guru, as follows. The sages said, Lord, even great Prajapatis of the world like Marichi and the highest sages like us stand deluded by your Maya. The Almighty Lord of the universe, you behave like an ordinary creature, concealing your true self behind your seemingly human activities. Oh, all your Leelas are really most wonderful. Just as the earth, though one, assumes different names and forms to its various products, the tree, the stone, the clay jar, etc., which all grow from the earth or are made from the earth and are essentially the same as the earth. Even so, though one, you assume various names and forms, and though static, you create and protect the universe and swallow it up by your own self, and yet these activities do not bind you. Oh, what is all this but a mere Leela on your part, O perfect one? Lord, though you are the supreme spirit beyond the realm of Prakriti, you assume from time to time a form made of pure sattva for the protection of your devotees and suppression of the wicked, and by your example maintain and perpetuate the eternal Vedic path. Really speaking, it is you who manifest yourself in the form of the different castes and orders. Lord, the Vedas constitute your immaculate heart. Through ascesis, study, meditation, and samadhi, you are realized there in both your manifest and unmanifest aspects, as well as in your transcendental aspect, which is beyond these two and is the substratum of both. Since you are known through the medium of the Vedas, which are stored in the heart of the Brahmanas, who memorize them, it is the Brahmanas who are the real medium of your realization. O perfect one, that is why you are the foremost patron of the Brahmanas, and that is why you honor them so much. In you lies the culmination of all blessings. You are the sole refuge of saints. Having met you today, we have attained the fruition of our birth, learning austerities and wisdom. Lord, your wisdom is unbounded. You are the supreme spirit, the embodiment of truth, knowledge, and bliss. You have concealed your glory by your own Yoga Maya. We offer salutation to you as such. The Rajas assembled here, and even the Yadus who enjoy life together with you, do not truly know you as the universal soul, the time spirit and ruler of the universe, veiled as you are by your own Maya. As a dreaming person looks upon all objects of his dream as real, and regards his dream-formed body, which is perceived only with the mind and exists in name alone, as his self, and not the body of his waking life, which is out of his mind for the time being. Even so, in waking life, when the mind gets deluded by Maya in the form of the wandering of the senses among their objects, which exist only in name, its discrimination gets clouded and the jiva fails to realize you who stand beyond the waking life, just as the waking body stands beyond the dreaming life. O Lord, sages who have attained ripeness of yoga succeed in enthroning in their heart your lotus feet, which are the origin of the holy waters of the Ganga, which wipe off heaps of sins. We are glad we have seen those feet today. Lord, we are your devotees. Pray shower your grace on us. Now the highest state of your realization is attained only by those who, through their overflowing devotion, succeed in shedding their ego, which obscures the souls. Sri Shuka continued, O Rajarishi, having thus praised and taken leave of the Lord, Raja Dhritarashtra and the virtuous Yudhishthira, the sages thought of returning to their hermitages. Perceiving this, the illustrious Vasudeva approached them. Bowing to them and clasping their feet, he addressed them with great humility. Vasudeva submitted, Sages, in you reside all the gods. I offer my salutations to you. Kindly listen to me. Pray tell us by what sort of activity one may be able to rid oneself of all karma and the desire for karma, the desire to perform action. Devarishi Narada replied, O sages, it is no great wonder that regarding Sri Krishna as his child, Vasudeva should inquire of us with a view to his enlightenment, the road to his spiritual welfare. For human beings are generally prone to underrate those who are near them. We find persons living on the banks of the Ganga, leaving the Ganga water and resorting to other sacred waters for their purification. Sri Krishna's self-awareness is never obscured by the processes of creation, preservation, and dissolution of the universe, which are carried out by time. It does not suffer diminution on any account by itself or through any external cause or through the action of the gunas. His wisdom is never obscured by the five afflictions, ignorance, egotism, attraction, repulsion, and the fear of death. nor by virtuous and sinful karmas, nor by their fruits in the form of joys and sorrows, nor again by the ebb and flow of sattvika and the other gunas. He is the one Lord without a second. When he veils himself under his own potencies, the vital airs, etc., ignorant people consider him as veiled, even as when the vision gets obscured by clouds, mist, and eclipse, etc., people regard the sun as screened by them, even though the screens have had no effect whatsoever on the sun itself. Addressing Vasudeva within the hearing of Sri Krishna, Balarama, and the Rajas, O Raja, the sages then said, the best way of neutralizing past acts and wiping out the desire for future action through action itself is to propitiate with reverence Vishnu, the Lord of all sacrifices, through sacrifices. Perceiving through the eye of the Shastras, the all-knowing sages have declared it to be the easiest means of attaining tranquility of mind and a sacred duty, the performance of which brings delight to the heart. For the twice-born householder, the most propitious course is to perform with reverence the worship of the Supreme Person, expending money earned by fair means. O Vasudeva, a wise man should get rid of his thirst for wealth by performing sacrifices and making gifts, should get rid of his craving for wife and children by enjoying the pleasures of a married life, and should get rid of his desire for the enjoyment of the higher worlds by thoughts of those higher worlds being subject to the ravages of time, meaning that one can't stay there forever. Having thus renounced all three types of desires, even at home, the wise proceeded to the forest for ascesis. O Vasudeva, the Brahmana, the Kshatriya, and the Vaishya are born with debts to gods, the rishis, and the pitris. He who renounces the home without discharging these debts through the performance of yajnas, study of the scriptures, and by begetting a son, respectively, surely falls. In other words, the debt to the gods is fulfilled through performing yajnas to the gods. The debt to the rishis is fulfilled by studying the scriptures. The way to honor their debt is to study the teachings that they gave their lives to pass down to us. And the debt to the ancestors is to carry on the lineage. O wise Vasudeva, you are, as a matter of fact, free from your debts to the rishis and the pitris now, given that he has studied the scriptures sufficiently and has many children. Pay off your debt to the gods through the performance of sacrifices, and thus freed from all obligations, you may quit the home. Vasudeva, you have surely worshipped Sri Hari, the Lord of the universe, with supreme devotion. That is why he has accepted the role of a son to you. Sri Shuka went on. Hearing the aforesaid words of the rishis, the high-minded Vasudeva sought their favor by saluting them with his head bent low and appointed them to officiate as priests at his sacrificial performance. So in other words, they advise him to perform a yajna. He schedules it on the spot and asks them to officiate. Duly appointed as priests, O Raja, the rishis helped the pious Vasudeva in performing a number of sacrifices from the largest scale, right there and then in that holy place. On Vasudeva being initiated for the sacrifice, the Yadus and other kings took their bath, put on their best attire and ornament, and adorned themselves with garlands of lotuses. The consorts of Vasudeva too adorned themselves with gold necklaces and besmeared their bodies with sandal paste, and, clad in their best attire, joyously entered the sacrificial hall with offerings in their hands. Clay tom-toms, tabors, conches, drums, kettle drums, and other musical instruments were sounded. Dancers, both male and female, danced. Bards and panegyrists uttered praises. Gandharva women with their husbands sang beautiful songs. Vasudeva applied collyrium to his eyes and anointed his body with butter. The priests consecrated him along with his 18 wives by sprinkling water on them, just as in the ancient times the moon and the stars were first consecrated. Initiated for the sacrifice and clad in deerskin, Vasudeva looked most charming with his wives, who were all dressed in beautiful saris and adorned with bracelets, necklaces, anklets, and earrings. Clad in silk and adorned with jewels, the priests and supervisors of the sacrifice shone like the priests at the sacrifice performed by Indra, the slayer of Rutra. Sri Krishna and Balarama, the rulers of all jivas, shone brightly on that occasion with their relations, consorts, and sons who were their part manifestations. At the end of each sacrifice, Vasudeva performed, in accordance with the scriptural ordinances, the Agnihotra and other sacrifices, as well as those falling under the category of the Prakrata and Vaikrata sacrifices, and thereby worshipped and propitiated Vishnu, the Lord of all substances, rituals, and the mantras with which these yajnas are performed. Then, in due time, Vasudeva adorned the priests well with clothes and ornaments and gave them the yajna dakshinas, the sacrificial fees, and also gifted them duly adorned cows and girls, as well as lands and abundant wealth, as laid down in the scriptures. After going through the ritual of Patni Samjaya, which is a part of the yajna, and the rites connected with the concluding bath, those great sages who had officiated as priests of the yajna followed Vasudeva to the tank named after Parashurama and performed their ablutions there. After taking their bath, Vasudeva and his wives gave away all their ornaments and clothes to the bards, and adorning themselves well with new ornaments and dress, entertained all classes of men and animals down to the dog. He honored with extensive presents all his relations along with their wives and sons, as well as the princes of Vidarbha, Kosala, Kuru, Kashi, Kekaya, and Saranjaya, the supervisors of the sacrifice, the priests, hosts of gods, men, spirits, pitris, and the celestial bards. They all took leave of Sri Krishna, the abode of Sri, and left for their homes praising the yajna. Raja Dhritarashtra, Vidura, Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna, Bhishma, Drona, Kunti, Nakula, Sahadeva, Devarishi Narada, Bhagavan Vyasa, and other friends and relations and kinsmen felt the agony of separation when parting from their friends the Yadus. With their hearts moistened through affection, they embraced the Yadus and departed from their homes with great difficulty. In other words, great emotional difficulty, being reluctant to part ways. The other people also left with them. Honored with extensive presents by Sri Krishna, Balarama, Ugrasena, and others, Nanda, along with the other Gopas, out of love for them, stayed there for some time more. Having easily realized his great ambition, like one who crosses an ocean without much effort, Vasudeva felt delighted at heart. In the midst of his friends and relations, he took Nanda by the hand and addressed him. Vasudeva said, "Brother Nanda, God has forged for men a bond which is known by the name of affection. I think the greatest of warriors and yogis find it difficult to undo it. Highly virtuous as you are, the friendship you have shown to us ungrateful souls is unparalleled and cannot be repaid, and yet we know it will never cease. Oh, brother, formerly we could not do any good turn to you precisely because we were helpless, and now we are blinded by intoxication of wealth and power and do not look at you even though you stand before us. O virtuous brother, let not royal fortune fall to the lot of one who seeks blessedness. Blinded by it, man fails to recognize even his own kinsmen and relations." Sri Shuka continued. Vasudeva's heart melted with love as he said all this. Tears rushed to his eyes as he remembered the love and friendship which Nanda bore to him, and he began to weep. Anxious to please his friend and out of affection for Sri Krishna and Balarama, Nanda put off his departure from day to day and stayed there for 3 months, receiving the best attentions of the Yadus. They gratified him and his brother Gopas and other residents of Raja with enjoyments of various kinds, as well as with valuable ornaments, silk garments, and other invaluable presents. Vasudeva, Ugrasena, Sri Krishna, Balarama, Uddhava, and others presented him with gifts. Taking all these and permitted by the Yadus, Nanda finally left for his home after 3 more months. Nanda, as well as the other Gopas and Gopis, had transferred their heart to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, and they were unable to withdraw it from them. So they departed from Mathura, leaving their heart behind. When all the friends had thus returned to their respective homes, the Yadus, who looked on Sri Krishna as their deity and who now saw the monsoon approaching, returned to Dwaraka. Reaching there, they gave to the people an account of the grand festival, celebrated by Vasudeva, the adored of the gods, their meeting with friends and relations, and all that had happened in the course of this pilgrimage. Thus ends the 84th discourse entitled An Account of Sri Krishna's Pilgrimage to Samanta Panchaka, and the latter half of Book 10 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Sanghita. Discourse 85. The Lord brings back from the abode of death his 6 elder brothers who were murdered by Kansa. Sri Shuka began again. One morning, Sri Krishna and Balarama went to their parents to offer their salutations to them. Vasudeva received his sons affectionately, and after they had bowed to his feet, spoke to them. Vasudeva had heard about the glory of his sons from the lips of the sages, and had himself witnessed many of their wonderful exploits. He was thus convinced that they were no ordinary beings, but divine personages. Addressing them with great affection, he said, O Krishna, the embodiment of truth, knowledge, and bliss. O Sankarshana, the lord of the greatest yogis, you both are eternal. I know you are the rulers even of Prakriti and Purusha, the two direct causes of this universe. You are directly the substratum and both the instrumental and material cause of the universe. You are the universe's sole lords, and it has been brought into being for your Leela. Whenever and in whatever form it exists and whatever you react upon is nothing but you. You are the enjoyable in the form of Prakriti and the enjoyer in the form of Purusha, and also the ruler beyond them both. Lord, you are beyond the senses and beyond birth, existence, and other modifications. Having created this diversified universe in yourself, you have yourself entered it as its inner controller. Appearing as prana and as jiva, it is you who sustain and nourish it. The potency possessed by the prana and other forces responsible for the creation of the universe is your potency. For they are material and not spiritual in essence, and are also dependent on you. The activity which they exhibit is only apparent, the motive power behind them being your power. The luster of the moon, the glow of fire, the effulgence of the sun, the twinkling of stars, the flash of lightning, the firmness of mountains, the odor and sustaining power of the earth, all these are in fact you. O Lord, the slaking, life-giving, and purifying properties of water are you. You are water itself as well as its taste. The vigor of the senses, mental energy, and bodily strength, the activity of the body and its locomotion. All these, though attributed to the wind, to the principle of Vayu, really proceed from you. The cardinal points and the space denoted by them are you. Ether and its principal sound, speech in its subtlest form known by the name of para, and its other forms, Pashyanti, Madhyama, as well as Vaikari, consisting of letter sounds and words denoting several objects, are nothing but you. The power to reveal objects in hearing and the senses, the deities presiding over them, and the power by which they do so, are indeed you. The determining faculty of the intellect and the power of duly connecting various experiences in hearing in the jiva are you. And the elements you inhere as their cause, the tamasa aspect of ahankara. In the senses you exist as their cause, the taijasa aspect of ahankara. And the deities presiding over the senses, as well as in the mind you exist as their cause, the vaikarika aspect of ahankara. And you are maya, the cause of the repeated birth of jivas, bound to karma. As in the modifications of a substance, the original substance is observed to be the abiding factor, so you are the imperishable truth behind all these perishable objects. The three modes of Prakriti, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, and what are known as their modifications, are in fact assumed in you, the transcendent Brahman, through your wonderful yogic power. Therefore, these modifications do not exist in you. When they are projected on you, they appear in you, who appear as permeating them. At other times, however, you remain in your absolute state. This universe is but a flow of the three gunas. They who fail to perceive the subtle presence in it of your absolute state as the all-soul get entangled in karma and undergo repeated births and deaths in this world. O Lord, providentially I have attained in this land of Bharatavarsha the rare gift of a human body, endowed with vigorous senses and organs, and yet under the influence of your Maya, my lifetime has been frittered away in neglect of the purpose of my existence. You have bound the whole of this universe with ties of affection, having their roots in self-identification with the body and the feeling of mine with regard to those connected with the body. You are no other than the lords of Prakriti as well as of all individual souls, and not my sons. You have come down for the destruction of the Kshatriyas who have become a burden to the earth. You yourself spoke like that in unambiguous terms to me at the time of your avatarana. Therefore, O befriender of the afflicted, I have sought for protection this day your lotus feet, which dispel the fear of transmigration, haunting those who have taken shelter with them. I am fed up with this much of craving for sense enjoyments. It was under the influence of this that I have so long identified myself with this mortal body and looked on you, the Supreme, as my child. O Lord, in the lying-in chamber, you said that, though unborn, you had, as a matter of fact, been manifesting yourself through us in different pairs each time for defending your own laws. Like the sky, you assume diverse forms and cast them off, even though you are one and infinite. Who can know the secret of your wonderful potency, Yogamaya? All people extensively sing your glories. Sri Shuka resumed. Hearing these words of his father, Lord Sri Krishna, the crown jewel of the Yadus, began to smile. Bowing in all humility to his father Vasudeva, he replied in sweet words as follows. Father, we are your sons. You have in these words expounded the highest philosophical truths to us. We accept as true whatever you have said. Yourself, my venerable brother, Sri Balarama, myself, the citizens of Dwaraka, and all others, including the mobile and mobile creation, should be regarded as Brahman, a jewel among the Yadus. The self is really one, self-effulgent, eternal, identical with the body, etc., and unqualified, yet it projects the gunas out of itself, and in the bodies of the various creatures evolved out of these gunas, it appears as diversified, perceptible, transient, distinct from the body, etc., and qualified. Just as ether, air, fire, water, and earth, though one in essence, appears differently in its different products, and can be distinguished as manifest or unmanifest, meager or abundant, and so on, so the self too appears as many through its various adjuncts. Sri Shuka continued. Parikshit, hearing these words of the Almighty, Lord Vasudeva was rid of his sense of diversity, and delighted at heart became silent and drove away all thoughts from his mind. Devaki, who represented all the deities in her person, and who was present there when this conversation was going on, was greatly astonished to hear that her sons had brought back the deceased son of their guru from the abode of Yama. Recollecting her sons who had been done to death by Kansa, she felt agitated in mind, and addressing Sri Krishna and Balarama with tears in her eyes, piteously spoke. Devaki said, O Balarama, the delighter of hearts, your nature is beyond the ken of mind and speech. O Krishna, you are the supreme lord even of great masters of yoga. I know you to be the rulers of even the Prajapatis and manifestations of the most ancient being, Sri Narayana himself. They say you have descended on earth through me this time for the destruction of kings who, having lost through flux of time their virtues and excellences, are transgressing the injunctions of the scriptures and have therefore become a burden to the earth. O soul of the universe, it is well known that from your part manifestation in the form of the spirit proceeds Maya, and from Maya the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And from a particle of these gunas proceed the creation, growth, and dissolution of the universe. Today I resort to you for protection. I have heard that being urged by your guru Sandipani and guided by Providence, you brought back his son who had died long before from the abode of death, and thereby discharged your debt to the guru. The lords of masters of yoga as you are, I desire that you should similarly grant my desire also, and bring my sons who had been done to death by Kamsa, so that I may see them. Sri Shuka went on. Thus directed by their mother, O scion of Bharata, both Sri Krishna and Balarama, with the help of their Yogamaya, entered the subterranean region of Sutala Loka. When Bali, the Raja of the Asuras, saw the sole and adorable object of the universe as well as of his own, manifested in the dual form of Sri Krishna and Balarama, enter Sutala, he sprang at once from his seat and with a heart overflowing with joy at their sight, greeted them along with his family. Full of delight, he offered them excellent seats, and when both these divine personages were seated on them, so the tradition goes, Mahabali washed their feet and sprinkled on his head as well as on all the members of his family that water which purifies the whole universe from Brahma downwards. Then Bali duly worshipped them by offering them valuable clothes, ornaments, sandal paste, betel leaves, lights, dishes sweet as nectar, and other sumptuous articles, and surrendering his all, his family, his wealth, and even his own self to them. With a heart saturated with love, he bore the Lord's lotus feet again and again on his bosom and on his head, so the tradition goes. His eyes bedimmed with tears of joy, and his hair standing on end. And in a voice choked with emotion, he prayed to the Lord, O protector of men, O Rama, you are infinite. You are great. O Krishna, you are the creator of the universe. The path of knowledge and the path of devotion have both been originated by you. You are the absolute, the supreme spirit. Surely your darshana cannot be easily obtained by ordinary beings through their own effort, and yet through your grace it is so easy to gain. For you have today of your own accord vouchsafed that to us, whose temperament is predominantly Rajasika and Tamasika. O Lord, we and other beings similar to us, the Daityas, Danavas, Gandharvas, Siddhas, Vidyadharas, Charanas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, Pishachas, Bhutas, and the leaders of Pramatas, instead of adoring you through devotion, constantly bear deep-seated grudge to you, whose form is the very embodiment of the Vedas, a manifestation of the purest form of sattva. That is why some of us, through inveterate hatred, and others through devotion with some interested motive, have been so closely united with you as has not been possible even for gods possessed of a sattvika nature. O Lord of Masters of Yoga, even great yogis often fail to comprehend the true nature and mode of operation of your Yoga Maya. How then can we be expected to know it? Therefore, O Lord, be pleased to grant that my mind may obtain a firm hold on your lotus feet, which are sought after even by those who are free from all desires, so that by resorting to them I may be able to get out of this dark well of a householder's life, and under the shelter of those feet, which are the sole refuge of the world, may attain peace and tranquility and move in the world without any company. And if I have to associate it at all with anybody, let it be with those saints who are friends of all. Lord, you are the ruler of all beings in creation. Pray make us sinless and advise us that course by following which, with faith, man acquires immunity from injunctions and interdictions. The glorious Lord said, O chief of Asuras, in the first Manvantara, presided over by Swayambhuva Manu, Marichi had 6 sons to his wife Urna. They were all devas. They laughed when they saw Brahma intent upon sexual intercourse with his own daughter. On account of this misdemeanor on their part, they were cursed by Brahma and had to take birth in the Asura race as the sons of Hiranyakashipu. Thence they were transferred to Devaki's womb by Yogamaya and were murdered by Kansa as they were born. O chief of the Daityas, Mother Devaki grieved for those children of her own who are now with you. In other words, they have been reborn here. For removing the sorrow of our mother, we propose to take them from here. They will thereby get completely freed from their curse once for all and will happily return to their celestial abode. Their names are Smara, Udgita, Parishvanga, Patanga, Kshudhabhrit, and Grini. By my grace, all 6 of them will regain their original happy state. Parikshit, having thus explained their mission to Bali, the 2 brothers took the children with them who had been reborn in Sutalaloka, and duly worshipped by Bali, returned to Dwaraka and handed over the children to Mother Devaki. At the sight of those children, milk began to flow from the breasts of Devaki through an upwelling of maternal love. Placing them on her lap, she embraced them and repeatedly smelled their crowns, meaning the crown of their head. Overwhelmed with emotion at the touch of her children, she suckled them with great delight, deluded as she was by the Lord's Yoga Maya, which takes the form of affection in order to keep the cycle of creation going on. The milk in Devaki's breasts was veritable nectar, for it was the remnant of what had been tasted by Sri Krishna. Having suckled such milk and blessed with the touch of the Supreme Lord, they attained knowledge of the self. They bowed to Sri Krishna, the protector of cows, to Mother Devaki, to their father Vasudeva, and to Balarama, and ascended to the abode of the celestials in the presence of all. Mother Devaki was astounded to see her deceased children return to earth and then depart again, and concluded that it was nothing but a Leela of Sri Krishna, the protector of men. Sri Krishna, O scion of Bharata, is the same as the Supreme Spirit. His powers are unlimited. Endless are his exploits, which are so wonderful as this. Sutta resumed, so zooming one narrator further out. O sages, the fame and glory of Sri Krishna are immortal. The stories of his Leelas rid the world of all sins and bring delight to the ears of devotees and saints. They have been narrated by the revered Sri Shuka, the son of Vyasa. He who constantly hears them or repeats them to others gets his mind fixed in the Almighty Lord and attains his abode of eternal bliss. Thus ends the 85th discourse entitled Sri Krishna Brings Back His Deceased Elder Brothers in the latter half of Book 10 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. And I think that's probably a good stopping point for today. It's just about 10 o'clock. And the next discourse starts a new kind of cycle of stories. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you, Devla. Awesome.
All right.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Ekadashi on Tuesday, according to ISKCON calculations.
Yep. Thanks. Good reminder.
Yeah, Haribol.
Haribol.